Before we look ahead to this season, we really want to reflect on the season just gone, because not only was it your first one in charge, but you guided Spurs to an FA Cup final for the first time in the club's history. When you arrived just over a year ago, did you think that having an FA Cup run like you had would have been a possibility?
No, to be honest, it was unexpected. Because I mean, you come to a new country, a new club, new players. They were struggling the year before, and I kind of just wanted to make sure the first year was to turn that around and make sure we have an identity, how to play, not be relegated, and try to just push higher in the table. So I mean, the cup run was more of a bonus from the first game. Basically, I was more focusing on the league and how we play. But on the other hand, the FA Cup is something special, and I think when you move to England, you realize that it's very, it's actually special here, and the final is at Wembley. So when you started that journey, you kind of realize there's not too many games to reach Wembley, and in football, in those kind of games, you can actually have a good strike and reach there. So I think we actually believed in it, even if I didn't really think we should reach the final. And when we got Man City in the quarterfinal for the fourth time this year to play against them, I was like, oh, come on. But on the other hand, we had a few good performances against them before that, so we kind of learning how to try to beat them. And then we had a really good evening at Brisbane Road, and semi-final at the stadium, and of course it was not a fun result in the final, but it was a great experience, and I think it's a great lesson for us for the future, because we're learning a lot even when we lose.
And even for you as a manager, I remember talking to you before the final, and you said your family were going to be in the stadium and everything. So even for you to kind of step out on that hallowed turf in your first season must have been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I had some siblings flying over from Sweden. I had a few friends there, and I had my kids and my wife. And it's also nice to see everybody else so proud. All the fans we had, it was amazing actually, and to take in that you were at Wembley with so many fans and so many spectators, it was amazing. And I mean, yes, we were really, really sad afterwards because we lost 4-0. It was not a fun story, but sometimes in life you also need to make sure what's the whole journey, and I mean that whole journey was actually very quickly go to that final and fight for a title. So afterwards we were of course disappointed, but very proud as well. I mean, Tottenham Hotspur should be in those finals, so they haven't been ever in the women's side, and a long time ago in the men's side. So it was a good first step in this journey.
Other than that cup run, what other moments stood out for you last season?
I think when you come as a new coach and you play on these big stadiums that you grew up with, and you play the first game at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, which is one of the best women team for the last 5-10 years, right? It was like the first game there was actually one of the best games for me. I was like, all of a sudden I was coaching at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea and trying to do what we want to do, play brave football, try to compete, and we went out there and had a good performance. They were better than us. They won 2-1, but we actually almost got a point, and we also showed you guys and the fans that we're doing something else this year. We're going to try to play some brave football. We're going to try to press the teams, and we're going to try to play our style. So I think after that game, it was a relief that I actually made the team believe that we can do it. And I think the fans and the board members and everybody was a big part of that game, was a game changer, that, okay, we are a different team this year. Then we had some really good games after that, and won a few games and so on, and played some good football. And then we had some really bad games, Man City and Man United, and we're learning from that as well, like I say. And we that's the part of a journey when you come as a new coach and new player, that you need to have some good times and bad times to find your way. And then we also realized around Christmas that we need to adapt. We need to make sure we can find ways to beat the top teams, because they are really good. And I think the main thing was, like a similar thing, was Arsenal in the Conti Cup in a way. We came from 2 really big losses, and we just like, no, we're going to keep playing the way we want to play. That was my mission for that game, and we had so many players out of injuries, and we went there and played 3-3, and we were almost beating them. And then we had them 3 days later on in the big game, North London Derby at the stadium, and they could switch the whole starting 11, and we basically just switched one player and played the same team and beating them with the fans behind us. So I think that was of course the biggest moment for me this year, and also very proud that we could do that for the fans, beating the highest rival in the stadium, the first game at the stadium. And that was amazing. And also good for our self-confidence. And for me as well. I mean, if you have lost that one, big numbers as well, people will probably think of this Swedish guy coming here and just want to play good football by losing, right? So I think it was a good game for me as well to make sure that players believe in what we're doing. Then a lot of new players in after Christmas because we needed to adapt the squad to what we want to do and how we want to play for the long time. So we took the chance to actually switch quite many players at that window, which affected us a little bit. So we kind of went back one step, had some ups and downs in the performances, and then we had the FA Cup that kind of saved the spring season because we didn't really develop as much as I wanted because we switched so many players, but we actually find a really good balance in how we played, and we had the FA Cup. So when we summarized the season, it was still a good season, and I must say the players bought into what we're doing, and the club bought into what we are doing. So we're in a good space right now, I would say.
I remember that first game from a media perspective, and I kind of really made me sit up and think, oh my God, this is going to be a really exciting Spurs team to watch. You created something like 17 chances or something in the game against Chelsea. And I remember thinking, like, Spurs doing this, they struggled to create that across the season last season. And you were doing this in your first game against Chelsea. You touched on that North London derby. That, of course, was a standout moment. Do you feel like that Martha Thomas goal was the dictionary definition of counter-attacking football? It was such a beautiful passage of play.
Yeah, I think if you start from the beginning with that, I think we have a goal kick or something like that, and they press us high, and we are pressing. Arsenal was pushing us down quite much, but we still play out from the back. We still have rotations. We still have the bravery to play back to Barra and out on Kit and out to the left and play on wrong turn player. So that's actually the bravery I want from the players at this big stage. And then we do it with quality, high technique, and we do it actually with pace as well. And then you have those runs, and then we have that goal. And Jessica Nass doing an amazing sprint meter to just to open up that space for Martha as well. So yes, that's basically, and it's quite similar to the men's team as well, how they dare to play out and how they can attack with high speed and a lot of players when they break the opponent's press. So I think that's a really symbolic goal for Tottenham football.
And for you as a coach, you must look at that and say, that's our benchmark. That's how good we can be when everything falls into place. That's how good. And I guess for the team, you can point to that and say, that's how good we can be when everything is in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, players love that goal. They were loving it more than me, I guess, because they were so proud of doing it on the pitch. And I feel like when you see that you have a glimpse of what you can do already now, I think they have a strong belief that we do what's right for them as well. And I feel like most of those players who played that game were in the squad the year before as well. So it was not only new players, it was actually Ash Neville, it was actually Kit Graham, Petzelback. It was the players that played the year before as well. So we're not only buying new players, we're developing the players we already have in the squad, and some of them are 30 years old as well. It's not only 19-year-old players. So I think that was a really good, strong moment, and I think those are the moments we want to have more of, and I think we had a few of them during the whole season, but we didn't really have any single game where we were nailing everything, and that's the process of football, and make sure we have a journey in front of us, and it's going to take time. But I think we had more and more moments of those, and the West Ham game, the last game of the season, we had a few really good attacking football stuff, but still, we need to score more goals. We need to be even more sharp when we do getting these chances and so on, but we're getting there.
You've brought this distinctive style of football, Bobbyball, as we call it, and a lot of people have praised this new philosophy. The fact that you can see it so quickly across the team with a new manager and some new players in, what does that kind of playing philosophy mean to you, and how did you get the team on board so quickly, to believe in it, to play it, to be brave?
I mean, that's a part of my leadership strategy, how I want to be as a coach, and why I probably got the job with Tottenham, and how I want to make sure I develop players as well and actually entertain the audience as well. So during my journey as a coach, I've kind of learned that winning is not everything, even if winning is the purpose. So in my early years as a coach, I won quite much, but I played quite boring football, a low block, counter-attack, and I realized if I want to reach it to the biggest level, I need to make sure I have some more stuff in my repertoire as a coach. So playing more fun football to entertain the audience was one of the things I wanted to make sure we play with high intensity, scoring a lot of goals instead of just defending. Developing players. I mean, every team want to have their their own players coming through and that you have a connection with. And I think that's one of the most important things for me as well, to make sure I don't just only bring Swedish players or Norwegian players. I want to develop the youth players from the country and the club I'm working in, because those players have easier to connect with the fans, to be honest. And then it's all about winning the way we want to do it. So you know that you're not going to win all the games. You know that you cannot win the league every year, but you know that you can develop your way of playing and become even better in how you play it, and that's going to make you win in the end. So use me as well to make sure they don't really focus too much on winning and hurry up to win, because then you might lose the performance. So I think it's more important to me to build this trust with the players, that we're focusing on how we play, how we can improve, what went wrong, what was good, and the wins will come. And if we lose, we're learning from that as well. Otherwise, it's going to be so much black and white all the time. And I feel like some of the clubs are always winning, and then they lose a few games, then they sack the coach or they change players all the time. And I feel like that's one way to go with it, but I don't want to work that way. I want to make sure we develop and reach the point where we want to dictate the games with our way of playing, and that's why you need to focus a lot on the identity of the play, right? And I think, you know, I worked in Häcken before. They had the same Häcken football, they call it. It was really keen to play that certain style. I guess that's why they recruited me as well. I fitted in there, and then Tottenham want to do the same stuff, and that's why I really enjoy working for Tottenham, because I can put my touch on the identity, and we're going to win in the end. That's the main thing, and I need to do that in the end. Otherwise, I'm not going to keep the job. But I need to do it my and the club's way, and that's really nice to work that way.
You've spoken about, and you said this quite early on, about wanting to create, you know, the next lioness coming through the club. That must have been, I mean, I'm sure they would have loved to have heard you say that's a commitment that you have to not only bring players in, but also grow the next lot
Yeah,
of young
I
players.
think even the men's team is doing quite young recruitments and want to find these huge talents which can be national team players. And I think I said after the first game against Chelsea about Grace Clinton that she's probably have the capacity, and then it went really quick for her, and I was really proud of that, because I feel like she came with bad self-confidence and didn't really know where to play, how to play, and she just brought her energy to the game and expressed her football in a perfect way, and it's actually exactly what we needed. She was so brave on the ball that first game, and I think she kind of broke the rhythm of everyone else not being too scared of it. So she had a big impact on that. And then to get Jessica Nass in the Lionesses in the end was probably even more proudness for me, because she's one of our own players and she's been through this journey, and you know, actually playing for England during my first season here. That was really a proud moment for me, and I think more players is to come as well. So we just need to find those young talent and develop them.
It must have been really hard though when you saw Grace having the season she was having, knowing she was on loan. You must have just like desperately wanted to keep her because she flourished so much on that side.
Yeah, I mean, we had a discussion already from the beginning about when you put a loan player in the club, your purpose is to develop that player, and if you don't have any possibility to buy that player, it's going to be problem for you, because you have a plan that she's going to be a success, right? But on the other hand, we were in a stage where we struggled a little bit to sign players, and not everybody wanted to have a buyout clause or whatever. So when we signed Grace, in the end, we just realized we're going to do this as a statement. We're going to show that we can develop players and just do it like a case study, basically. Like if she reached that point, then we're going to of course try to buy her. But if Man United don't want to sell her, we still have a benefit that we can show the world that we can develop young players, and that's what we did. And yes, we didn't keep her now, but we showed a lot of players, young players, that they can develop to become a national team player in Tottenham. And I think that's even more important than keeping Grace, actually.
How have you found this transfer window then after your season with the club? Because, you know, you've signed a young player like Ella Morris from Southampton, who's a really exciting prospect. Have you found more people really willing? I mean, you know, you're getting Australian international Claire Hunt in as well. Like, there's a good balance of experience. But have you found that people have seen your style, how you are interested and keen to develop young players? Have you found people knocking on your door?
Yeah, I think it's, instead of we hunting players, we actually have agents reaching out to us with really good players that seen what we have done and actually ask if they can come and play with us. And that's also very, very mature players that played in the top 3 clubs as well, that see that, oh, that environment looks fun actually. They play a certain style and they are upcoming team. So, and on the other hand, I don't want to be that coach who just switch 6, 7, 8 players every year, because I feel like I'm also very keen on the environment and how we develop the players we have and giving trust to them. So when we did this huge rotation of squad last season, that was because we needed players that fits the way we want to play. So the Christmas window was basically more of those players are the ones we probably should have signed now, but we already signed them at Christmas. So that's why I'm not really keen on signing too many players now, because we have the squad we want to work with for the next upcoming 2 years. I think we have the potential in this group to keep developing and keep pushing for the top teams. And the key signings this window is mainly a player and character, what we need in this group. So Claire Hunt is obviously an amazing footballer, but she's also like a great leader, a great person, a good role model. She's, she dictated her team around her. She's strong. She's good on the ball. So we look for those players. And Ella Morris is always, she's the perfect one, like upcoming young lionesses. She's the fullback we want, and she's gonna, compete with Ash Neville, who is the older generation, but still compete in really high level. So now we have a really good competition there. We still look for one or two more players, but we really look for the right player and character. So it's no stress for us. We have a strong belief in what we're having instead of just buying new clubs. And then you can see the other teams, they're buying a lot of players and so on, and then you can be a little bit stressed about, they are pushing it, and Tottenham doesn't push it. But for me, it's not pushing us to sign players. It's actually sometimes it's better to keep the players because we already work 1 year. So I think for me, I'm not stressed about every other team signing a lot of players, because I think they're going to struggle in the beginning to make it work, and we already are in a different way this year where we already have competition and the players already know how we want to play. So it's our way, and we're going to do it this way, and I think it's going to be in the long term really good, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah. And you've touched on some of the criteria there. It's not just about what they do on the pitch, but what they bring as a person. What does a Robert Vilahamn player look like? What's the kind of criteria that you look for when you're scouting for a player?
I build my leadership on 4 different words, and it's basically characters, how you should be as a person in your way. And if you don't do that, you will have a big problem to work with me, because then the standards will not be there, and then we will have misunderstandings. So the first one is to be professional. I need players that are taking care of their career, and if they cannot do it, I'm going to help them, of course, and we're going to help them. But it's very important they are very professional. And that comes from me not being professional when I was a player. I'm kind of, my playing career was not reaching their highest level just because I was not professional. So I'm learning by those mistakes and trying to make sure I'm very professional, and I'm trying to make sure my environment is that. And I need players that are ready to be professional enough to compete. And then it's about showing passion. I mean, I'm loving football. Most of the people working with football actually have a passion for football. It's not all jobs that have that, but football, I think most of them actually have a passion for it. So I just feel like I'm trying to bring a lot of energy to the training ground, to the games. And to get energy, you also need to give energy. And I think if you have those players who you only, mooning all the time or not really want to be there all the time, you kind of steal the passion and the energy you need. So those players that really, really love what they're doing, like Grace Clinton, like, Bethany England, they are bringing the energy because they love what they are doing. And I think you just want to find those players. So Ella Morris, she's born up in a football family, and she just loves being better every day. And, those players I really love working with. Rosa Kafaji, who went to Arsenal now, she's one of those who is going to be the best player in the world. And every morning she comes with the football and, dribbling, and she speaks football, she works football. And it's like those players are amazing to work with. The third thing is to be present. I feel sometimes that everybody's on a journey that you want to reach somewhere, and you forget to work where you are. So I feel like I need those players who are, when you're having this kind of podcast, or you're having a meeting, or you're having a passing drill, you need to be there. You need to listen to me. You need to show that you care. You need to make sure you use every time you get to get better. So those players who are a little bit not present all the time, they have problem to work with me, because they're probably not going to play so much, because I'm going to have problems with those attitudes, because I need to make sure we stay present. If the opponent score a goal, we need to stay with the game plan. We cannot just start doing whatever you want. You need to stay with the game plan, for example. And the last thing is being brave, and that's very much easy with Tottenham, because to dare is to do, and for me it's very easy to combine that with me and my bravery, to make sure you are brave on the pitch, off the pitch, when you speak out, 1 against 1, you need to be brave. Otherwise you will have problem to get playtime from me, because if you're only scared when you play, it's not going to work. So great footballers, but this is even more important when I speak to new players.
And I know we've talked a lot about youth players and bringing in young players, but look at the more experienced players. How important are they to then buy into that philosophy and bring the young players along? We've seen a bit of a resurgence of some players under you as well, which I think has been wonderful. Amy Turner, Ash Neville, Drew Spence, players like that, really playing a key integral part to your team. So how important is that experience when you're trying to blend and bring in youth?
I think I've learned last year that it's more important than I thought from the beginning. So, when I was youth coach for under 18 boys team in Sweden, and they were only boys and really young. And then I brought all these guys to a senior team and played only young ones, and we won Division 3, Division 2. So it was a great environment. When I went to the women's football and Häcken, it was also a very young team. But then after a while, I realized that to not have those experiences player could also have an effect where we just get scared instead of brave. So we signed, an example was Ivy Lewick, the Australian centre back, and we signed her as a 36-year-old, I think. And she came on and was so mature and professional, and she trained extra in the afternoon and everything. And she was in the squad for the World Cup last year as a 38-year-old. And I just feel like that's a good example, and you don't need to steer blind on the age. Basically, it's more like the passion of being better. So when I look at Drew, and when I speak to Drew about before she got the new contract, she want to be better. I want to make sure she becomes better than she have ever been before, and she had buying into that. So I think you can develop and bring that to the table even if you are 31 or 32 as well. So if you have those players, they have a experience as well, so I can use them quite much when I speak to the younger ones, or if I cannot speak to the younger ones, they can speak to the younger ones during a session and so on. So my leadership is very much built on a leadership group and those kind of players who can help me coach on the field, and that's why Beth in England and Drew Spence, for example, is very keen for me, because I cannot be everywhere and coach everyone. I need to make sure I have staff members around me and players around me that support my leadership.
I imagine those heads and those voices were very important in the dressing room at Wembley, where they've walked out before, they've had those experiences, those big moments, and you're going to have a lot of young players who maybe were having firsts and had nerves, and those kind of heads and voices are probably quite key as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you play the big games, my voice, you cannot hear me at the stand. The sideline is so crowded and there's so much people there, so you need them, and also make sure they play with experience. I think, and also that you cannot. They are also footballers, so they will also be affected of the big scene, right? But the main thing is, like, if you look at Drew Spence, she can dictate a game how she plays as well. She doesn't only need to speak to the players; she can also slow down the tempo so we get back to the game, or we can raise the tempo if we need that as well, because she's so good at playing football. So you need those players, but then you also need Grace Clinton types that can also break the line and do this crazy stuff that you don't really know if she's going to succeed or not, but it's still part of the being brave and breaking lines. And so you need a mixture of that, and then you just need to make sure you are a team that work together and have each other backs and support each other, because I want them to express their football in the way we play and not create like robots. I want to make sure they feel like they can express their football, but still in the framework that we have.
And on the pod over the last season, we've often called Spurs and Liverpool the kind of WSL disruptors, where you're taking points off teams at the top, and there's still arguably a lot of work to do to close that gap to the top three on and off the pitch. How do Spurs achieve that? What does kind of closing that gap look like to you?
I mean, if you look at only the points that we have up to the top three from last year, is a big gap. If you think that you're going to win those games and close that gap that way, it's going to be hard. So I think the main thing is to keep pushing, but also I like that Liverpool, I like that some other clubs is also pushing, because I think the top three need to lose more points against more teams, so it becomes even more competitive, because a normal league will be more teams that take points from each other, and then you actually don't need to win every game except one and win the league. So the Swedish league is quite hard to win as well, because it's normally one or two teams who win basically all the games except one or two, and it's the same in Italy, and it's the same in France, and the same in Spain. I think the women's football in England and all over the world in the final stage will be more competitive, and then you also don't need to win all the games, but you need to be very consistent in your performance and win the right games and have a few draw here and there and just lose a few games, but you need to find a balance in that. And I think we're going to make sure we are consistently good and better next year. We're going to make sure we try to get more points. If the top three win the same amount of points like this year, we're probably going to have a big problem to reach them. if it's more competitive, we might actually reach them, or we actually have a really good strike and get even more points. But in the long end, we just need to develop the way we play and make sure we can handle all the teams in the league and be able to compete against Arsenal, Man City, and Chelsea as well, which we did last year. But we might need to win a few of those games more, though. And then just give ourselves time. I mean, they buy all these players and then they add even more money. And as Tottenham club, we don't want to just go that way. We're going to go our way. And that's why I'm happy with a 3-year extension, because then I know we can do this for the long time instead of just next year's all in, right? If they told me, like, you need to go for the Champions League next year, otherwise you're out, then I would probably sign other players. But this is not the case. We keep building on what we're having, and that gives me a calmness that we are on the right pathway and we are closing the gap, and Liverpool is closing the gap, and hopefully next season we have even more competitive league.
Well, I guess last season was, of course, everyone always said no one ever loses more than 2 games and wins the league. And for the first time, that did happen, 3 games. And I think we'll probably start to see more and more of that. You touched on the new contract. How important is, not that there's not pressure, but I think with the game moving so fast, expectations and demands are often really quite high and people want results. How important is it for you as a manager to know you've got this longer term vision and that you have a club that appreciates you don't just go top of the table in one season?
I mean, I think it's a good thing, because for me as a person, bringing my family to England and everything is a good statement for them to show me that we trust you, Robert, and you brought your family here, and we're not just going to give you 1 more year and then you're out. On the other hand, I always know that if we fail with the result, I'm going to get out, and that's fine. I know the business. I've been in the business so long, so I'm not scared of that either. So it's okay. But I think it's nice that they show me that they want to work with me for a long time. It gives me self-confidence that I'm doing the right stuff that they like. On the other hand, it's very much being present for me as well. I cannot think of year 2, year 3 too much. I have a plan for that, but I'm very much working here and now to make sure we get better here and now. Then, of course, we have a plan with how long contract do we sign with players and so on, but it's very much important that we develop right now. If we have a really bad season now, of course we can have a better season next season, but we just need to work where we are, and that's right now.
So what does success look like for you this season, both in terms of performances but also player development? What are your goals?
I mean, if you look at just result-wise first, you always want to be better. So that's easy to see. Okay, you were top 6. Could you go higher in the table? You have these points. Can you get more points? So, I mean, obviously we want to have that somewhere, and the club want to have the progress there. But I'm not really that keen on that thing. I want to measure more, like, can we get even more national team players for the national teams? Not even just only England. It could be other national teams as well. And then it's more about the individual development. We focus a lot this year to make sure the players get better in 4 aspects: mentally, physically, tactically, and technically. So my staff group is a lot of great people knowing a lot of good stuff. So I'm trying to make sure the players get this great individual development plan that Vic is running, so they get better in all these areas. Because when the players get better, it's easier to play that football we want to do. And then we have the tactical issues, which my analyst team as well working with. So if we can make everything work with the data, if they run more and run quicker, if they have better passing accuracy, better technique and how we're doing it, if they can be mentally strong and survive when we're down by 2 goals, or if we play these big games, if they can do all this, we're gonna be better and they're gonna perform better, and then I'm actually more happy with that. And then you have this environment thing. I'm trying to measure an environment, which is really hard. But for me, it's when I hear people speaking about they love to come to the training ground, they love to play in Tottenham when players want to come here. That's actually the most successful I think of, because that's what I'm really responsible for, to make sure we create this environment. So if you measure success for me this year is to get the players stronger, fitter, better, but also to make sure they use this environment to become the best version of themselves. And I cannot drive them to be better. I can just give them everything they need so they can drive themselves to be better. And that's the environment I want to create.
I love that. And I guess the other aspect for you guys is growing attendances. We saw some record attendances at games last season. And I feel like you as a manager, from our perspective in the media, it feels like you really understand the connection with the fans, the importance of growing the fans and them enjoying the football that you're playing. And you came down to that Adobe event in London, which you wouldn't get a lot of managers doing that, and it felt like you really understood the importance of those moments to speak to fans to kind of continue that upward trajectory of growth in attendances.
Yeah, I think I'm been in businesses before, and I think I learned a lot about how you run a business and how you do a startup. Basically, I was in a startup before working with that, and for me, it's two things here. I want to do a career in football, and now I'm in women football, which is a extremely high potential and still good level, but you can reach, the sky is the limit with the women's football. And to do that right, you need to address it to the right people so you get the right process. So the businessmen need to see about, okay, where is the money in this industry, right? And right now, perhaps not too many clubs earning money on the women's side, but they're earning a lot of money on the men's side. But if you understand the startup concept with investing money in a product that have a lot of potential, you're going to get the benefit later on. That's all the investment you have in startups. So if you get that, then you also need to understand, okay, how do you brand yourself? How do you brand the thing you have? And if you get it, like if you look at 20,000 people coming to the game against Arsenal, and most of them were families, kids, it's not only the men's fans that come to our games, it's actually other people that actually love these games and love to be at the stadium and so on. So if you give them a few more years with good experience and perhaps also a little bit more like content with the social media, with the players actually speaking to the players, me coming and speaking to them even more, you're kind of creating a different style from the men's. You don't need to copy the men's side. I think you can use some stuff from the men's side, but you can actually create women's football as something else. And I think that's actually what you should do, because the future is not like the history. So we need to make sure the fans that come to these games enjoy those games. And that could be TikTok videos, it can be different stuff, right? But we need to make sure we understand that world. And then you need to understand how you speak to different people with different aims, for example. And you guys as well, media. I mean, media in the women's football probably have not the best, fika at the training grounds or the stadiums, because we play at not always the best stadiums. But if you do a good job, and if we do a good job, we're going to raise this women's football to a higher stage, and then everybody going to have a benefit. So, and on the other side is the gender equity purpose in my career, which, I studied a lot about that, and I was very keen when I was a teacher, teaching, educating my students about that. I have twins, one daughter and one son. I want to make sure I do something more than just football. Football is fun, but it's something bigger there that I like to work with. And I think if I can make sure that I help gender equity and make sure that women's sport actually grows into this industry as a man, that's what I'm going to do. And I just enjoy that, because I feel like it needs to be men and women that drives that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need more people saying that, and more people like you saying that. I think that's a really important message. Just a final one on your fans and your fan base, for you and your players, just how important they are to the club, and maybe a message for them heading into this season.
I mean, I was not surprised, but I was really entertained with them, because they were actually so with us last year, and they were like growing with us. And I feel like they were singing, they were sharing, they were supporting us even when we were losing. And I feel like it was a really strong band between us. And I feel like they are growing when we are growing. They're enjoying the way we play. So I think we're going to keep developing. We're going to keep playing good football, and we're going to basically do it for them, because I think they are keen to have a women's team that compete in the highest stage, right? So I just hope that we can get even more games with high numbers from the fans, and also the away games, because it gives us a lot, right? So I'm very much looking forward to keep building that relationship and make sure we do this journey together, because without them, we basically don't have a product. So it's very important that we entertain them and enjoy them, to be fair.
Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've really enjoyed watching your football last season. Both Chloe and I at Upfront have really enjoyed watching your football. It's made us very excited to see you next season. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us. I know our listeners are going to love hearing from you.
Thank you for having me.